Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 17th of September 2014, and joining me on this edition are Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
It's true, this man has no dick.
Games Editor Mark Botwright.
I don't believe you're seriously considering listening to these men.
Audio Reviewer Ed Selley.
There is no Dana, there is only Zool.
And for the first time ever, we have a forum member joining us, known as chevyonfuel on the forums, our special guest, John Best.
That's a big Twinkie.
Welcome back to the podcast. We have another busy week after IFA. Apologies again for being so on topic in the last podcast. We hope it hasn't put you off listening to us this week or in the future. And we are going to go to the big question this week, which is the major yes or no decision and vote, which is, do you want to wear a smartwatch and look like a knob?
No, I don't really. I've got absolutely no interest in wearable tech generally, and smartwatches in particular. I just don't see the point. I've got a phone in my pocket, tells me the time, makes phone calls, can surf the net. Do I want to look like Dick Tracy every time I make a phone call or want to look at something? Not really. So I don't understand. I think it's just the media and the manufacturer trying to make something out of nothing. As far as I'm aware, neither me nor anybody I personally know is interested, but maybe you guys can prove me wrong.
Okay. Mr. Botwright, what do you think?
Do I want to wear a smartwatch? Is that a separate question to do I want to look like a knob?
No, I think they both go together, basically.
Oh, fair enough.
I think in your case, Mark, you always look like a knob, so we just move on to the second
I was going to say, they're not mutually exclusive, but you know what? If it was the iWatch, if it was something separate in itself...
hang on. There's no such thing as an iWatch, dear. It is the Apple Watch.
Well... Okay, if, shall we say, there was a separate unit that wasn't linked to my phone and did everything in itself, in one contained unit on my wrist, possibly, but then I'm kind of swayed by the idea of kind of odd little kind of user-designed faces and that kind of thing. So I'm easily swayed, but I think I'm not too keen at the moment.
Okay, so you're sticking with your Casio Digital.
How dare you? Data bank, thank you very much. And it's gold, just like Keith Lemon wears.
Mr. Selley.
I would rather eat my own scrotum. I've got to be honest, it does absolutely nothing for me. Actually, earlier this month, I retweeted one of the sort of noisy people on the sort of tech side of things, Milo Yiannopoulos, so I can never pronounce his name correctly. If you never want to have sex again, I understand there are a number of smartwatches now on the market, about as cool as cot death, and that pretty much. I don't like them, but that's principally because I already have a number of devices which require me to charge them more often than I would like. My watch, bless it, is not one of those items. It requires sort of power attention every 7 years. And I just can't get my head around having yet another piece of tech to sort of deal with. And also, on a wider and much more existential level, there is a boundary point between our perceptions of technology and our perceptions of personal jewellery, and no brand has yet to quite happily transcend that. Watches are watches, technology is technology, and they just don't exist in the same sphere of influence for me.
Okay, let's go to John. John, what do you think?
Absolutely not. If it's like an iPhone, it'll have like an 8-hour battery life, which isn't much use for a watch. And if you drop it, it's going to smash into a million pieces, and you look like a cock. So no.
In that order, presumably.
But if Ed's right, it might work as contraception. So.
It'll be banned by the Catholic Church if that's the case.
To be honest, what if there were stories that it gave off radiation like the old iPhones?
I don't know. It depends. It depends if it was on a particular wrist, and you.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Well, in all seriousness, every commentator out there, tech-wise, for the last 18 months, has been saying if one company is going to save the smartwatch market and make it a viable, fashionable device that people want to buy into and people want to have, then it'll be Apple. But then, if you look at the same commentators now, they all seem to be saying Apple missed the mark. They didn't create the product that everybody was expecting. I have to say, I think it looks darn ugly. It's not something I would put, but that's the same for all the smartwatches. But
I'm not sure what people were expecting. The missing link thing here is that people are wanting two things which I'm not 100% sure are practical. The first is that they want it to be powered by some substance as yet undiscovered by science that gives you a reasonable battery life. That can't be done. The second is that it is removing the need to tether them to a phone is a technological jump, and it also ultimately I don't think many companies are looking at these things as anything other than a phone accessory. And that then leads on to another awkward point, that it doesn't really matter how well built the Apple Watch is and how well you look after it. It's a watch, and it's the only watch. The smartwatches are unique in so much as they have a finite lifespan.
Yeah. And
people are going, cheap compared to a tag. And okay, that's fair enough. Tags are ultimately mass produced, but I mean, my tag is 24.5 years old. If we work on the principle that Apple will support an Apple Watch for between 5 or 6 years, I'd have spent £1,400, and that's before the phones to run the damn things, and that's crazy.
But at what point does it stop being a watch? That's my kind of question, because I know a lot of people who don't bother with watches now because they've got various devices that will obviously tell the time, and they just look at their smartphones. So it's a hybrid device. It's a complementary device, and Apple would be mad to kind of go straight over to some kind of Dick Tracy style watch that did everything that your iPhone did. It's a kind of nice little evolutionary step. They've done this, with many different devices along the way, which is get people used to a certain new interface, and at some point they will kind of almost cannibalize their own sales and move people onto the next product. You went from the iPod to an iPhone, and at a given point, if they want you to have this kind of Apple Watch, iWatch, whatever the hell it is, then at a certain point it will kind of subsume all the different functions that your iPhone and things do.
It's a valid point, Mark, because I think if we had this same discussion straight after the iPad was announced, everybody was like, well, what the hell do I need an iPad for? It's just a big iPhone. What use is it? Yeah, it's sold in millions.
Yeah, I scoffed at it. It's damn easy to look at pornography on an iPad, though.
I'd get a smartwatch if it could do the same thing as the watch in the TV series The Gemini Man, which maybe no one else remembers but me. But it was a show in the 70s where this guy had this basically a digital watch. When he pressed a button on it, he became invisible. Now, if it did that, I reckon I'd buy it. That'd be quite cool. It was only so they could use a digital watch in a TV show at the time.
Okay, Steve, getting back to the real world, I guess people are going to be surprised probably at the fact that I think we're all kind of, we don't really we see what it's about, but it doesn't do anything for us because
we are all old though.
But at the end of the day, it's blokey tech at the end of the day, and it should be appealing to us. Is that not the case?
Problem is it's form and function though, which is a key point about a watch. Is you expect it to have a certain amount of battery life, and I think that's the thing that most people cite with regards smartwatches. I remember reading a story about one of the first blokes to have a kinetic watch, and found that his lifestyle was too sedentary to actually power it, and how sad he was. Ultimately, the watch is the one thing that you kind of rely upon, and you don't tend to think about charging it. And I've got so many USB cables, I've got so many different chargers for things. It's that kind of one thing that you can put on that is absolutely reliable, that does a solitary function. And so, if it could do everything else, then that's great, but it can't be at the expense of finding out that, no, I can't tell what the time is because my battery's run out.
It must be said, in terms of sending a message, doesn't it? Obviously the vast majority of dive watches will never go anywhere near the sea, but it's a message of ruggedness and the rest. All smartwatches send a message that I intend to be no more than 24 hours from a main socket for the rest of my days. It's not the most dynamic and exciting message that you can give out there, really, is it? And I don't know. I mean, in terms of going back to what Steve was saying, in terms of smartwatches, I could just about own Brosnan's Omega in GoldenEye. If I could blow shit up with stuff, I'd buy into that. Maybe one of the Roger Moore ones with a laser in as well would be quite cool. But
the one Roger Moore had with the magnet, so he could pull that zipper down.
Yeah, I mean, although the irony is that in today's environment, a watch that let out that much of a magnetic field would just kill all of your other tech at the same time, which would be anticlimactic. It's like, oh dear, I now need a new phone. But on the plus side, I have just unzipped a lady's dress. Wicked.
Okay, so that was the smartwatch, the Apple smartwatch. It was announced last week. Also announced last week were obviously the two new iPhones, the 6 and the 6 Plus. I tried to follow it. The feed was atrocious. It kept falling out. It kept getting Japanese and Korean and picture and sound, and then no sound and then picture. And in the end, I gave up. For a company like Apple to have such a disastrous feed of their press conference, it didn't do them any favours, I don't think. And looking at Twitter was quite funny, and I think it was Denny's that took one of the shots of the plate and changed it around, which was quite funny as well. And they did that in a matter of minutes, which I thought was rather funny. But the two phones,
Denny's, the restaurant chain.
Yes. It really was quite funny the way that they changed the plate. You know, the plate they came up with the colour bars and stuff, and we will take you back, blah blah blah. But it, had like a rundown of stuff, and they changed it all to Denny's bacon, basically, which was quite funny. Anyway, moving on. The two phones. I have to say, I've got an Apple iPhone. It's a 4, and I have felt no need to update that, and I still.
Sorry.
And I still don't really see a need to jump in with the 6 or the 6 Plus. I mean, was there anything in there that was revolutionary? I mean, this Apple Pay thing, my debit card does that, and it doesn't have a battery. It's going to go flat.
I suppose the bigger screen is handy.
Yeah, having now spent nearly a year with the Nexus 5, I like the form factor. And an iPhone with that form factor will appeal. But it's I don't know if we're going to cover the phones for you business, but it boils down really to what sort of price they're going to let them loose at. For me, my Nexus is still working perfectly fine. I am platform agnostic between iOS and Android. I have no strong feelings either way. It's all about who's going to sell me a phone under the terms and conditions that I want at a price that doesn't make me vomit. And we're going to have to see what the 6 comes with once the hysteria and the loon fruits have gone through on the early orders.
Anybody else feeling the love for the 6 and the 6 Plus?
No.
I think the 6 Plus is
HTC, so clearly you're not.
I'm on the 3rd HTC, and I'd never go back to anything Apple ever. Okay. Even if I was, maybe if they sponsored me, but I'm not
Hint, hint.
I think that's unlikely.
Yeah, Ed's been begging for beer sponsorship for the last 6 months.
Well, I know, it's just not going anywhere.
But it's interesting you say HTC. I've got to say, the One I think is a beautiful made piece of kit. Every time I see one and pick one up and stuff, it really is a really nicely designed, nice weight to it. Interesting to see why you like HTC.
Because I'm allergic to Apple stuff, so I avoid using iTunes, and trying to sync anything with an iPhone was going back to like 2008, and I did 3G when they first came out, and it was just an awkward experience. Nothing ever worked properly, and HTCs are just kind of plug it in, everything's copy and paste to your PC, because I'm old fashioned and still use Vista. And
sorry.
and they're built like a tank. I've dropped mine like 30 foot onto concrete, and it's nothing happened to it. With an iPhone, you'd probably still be picking up the pieces, I think. But there you go. Yeah,
I dropped my 4 the other week there, and luckily it smashed the back, not the front, so the screen's fine. It's just the back that's smashed to bits now. So, Mr. Botwright, what do you think? Are you going to go out and buy a 6 or a 6 Plus?
No, I've resisted the iPhone all the way through thus far, and so I don't see that changing anytime soon. I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to phones. I literally just want something that will allow me to kind of drag and drop files and that kind of thing. And beyond that, it largely stays turned off. I don't really like it. I would like to see phones go back to being a bit smaller. I'm still of the opinion that, should we say, once you get kind of over 4-inch screens and then you add in a decent case that will actually protect it, it becomes fairly bulky to kind of carry around. And this idea that I might take something like an iPhone 6 with me exercising or something, because it can now tell the difference between cycling and running. I don't see why I would do that, but there is that part of you that does think, well, I scoffed at the iPad, maybe I'm wrong, like the tagline, bigger than bigger. And you think, first of all, you think that's moronic, but then you think maybe it is genius. Or is that just me?
I don't know. It does look awful big. I'm sure that it has... there's a subset of people for whom it's perfect, but the Nexus size screen is all right for me to just check something off the cuff. And if I'm physically out for the day, I'll normally have either my camera bag or one of my many man bags, and I'll have an iPad in it. So, yeah, it doesn't, in the same way that big Samsung never fitted a particular niche for me, but I understand that the purpose of it for some people, just not for me.
Yeah.
He says sneeringly. Gotta love a man bag.
So that's the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. They look okay. They look nice. It looks like an iPhone. That's what iPhone things does. I don't think anybody here is going to go out and rush out and buy one. But then again, I remember us saying the same about the iPad, and then everybody bought one. So what do we know? And wrapping up on the Apple stuff under hardware news this week is the fact that if you look on the homepage, Ed has written an obituary. And what is that aimed at, Ed?
Well, it didn't actually come out as an announcement during this last Apple sort of product announcement thing. But at the same time as all the new stuff sort of appeared, the original iPod, now which had more recently been suffixed the Classic, disappeared after 13 years and 6.5 versions. And I felt, I have a great deal of affection for the iPod. As I said in the piece, it was the first piece of Apple equipment I owned. And I think in the excitement that we now have towards smartphones, tablets, phablets, stupid watches, we ignore just how much of the groundwork that was laid by the original iPod. And how also it's one of the very last connections between an Apple which was almost completely written off. And as I say in the piece, the original iMac had done a fair bit to pull Apple back from the brink. But the iPod was perhaps the first thing that Apple had launched in God knows how long, which had an appeal beyond people, either already within the fray and already within the sort of subset of Apple users, or enthusiastic computer users who were brought over to it. And yeah, the impact is huge. It changed a lot of how the audio industry works in terms of its understanding of peripherals and how it wants to work with other companies' products. The effect it's had on how menus and simple interfaces are actually generated. It's just far, far more important than I think. I think Apple has sort of became in the end sort of embarrassed about it. It just sort of existed and they didn't know exactly what to do about it. But I think it's a massively significant product, and we owe it a huge debt of gratitude. And for better or worse, the modern makeup of the audio industry is shaped enormously by the effect of the iPod, and that makes it. I thought that made it worthy of me banging away at the keyboard for an afternoon.
Cool. I'm sitting with one in my hand now, a classic. Not one of the originals. It is a classic, but I'm trying to make out which generation it is. It's an 80 gig one, so with a colour screen.
Is it white or silver?
It's black.
Right, okay. Well, the earliest it can be is a Gen 5.
Right, well, there you go. I still use it. I use it daily in the car, just on shuffle, through the head unit that's in the car, and I'll continue using it for that. It's ideal for what it does. Yes,
I mean, I as I said in the piece, I think that Apple have essentially abandoned further development in 2009. If you like, they were in a position to make further significant alterations and changes to how we consumed and used audio, and they had what they perceived to be bigger fish to fry, so they left it be. I felt that there was another generation of iPod Classic in the system. It could have made use of cut down bits of the iOS technology. It would have been lovely to have something which still was based around an actual mechanical hard drive that had limited app access and so on and so forth, but wasn't to be. And I also think that I think that Apple missed a trick not doing a final edition, because I'm weak enough to admit that I'd have put some thought into whether I bought one or not.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see how people are consuming music on the move nowadays. Like I say, I mean, I use mine in the car. It's exclusively in the car. I don't take it in my pocket with me with headphones or anything like that. Quite interesting to see how in-car stuff is moving along now, because it's all SD cards and USB slots and so on. I know John's just bought a brand new car, and in that it's SD cards and USB slots, isn't it? And it seems to be...
It's got everything, pretty much. But to be honest, in terms of my music stuff, I tend to just Bluetooth sync my phone to the car, and that's got me Spotify app on it, so that works pretty much seamlessly. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of like connections, and it's not just like I'd say high-end cars, but even like your bargain basement Vauxhall Corsas and that now are loaded with Bluetooth, SD cards, USB,
hands-free,
auxiliary ports, everything.
Yeah. So whereas 4 years ago, it was does it come with an iPod connector, or do I have an auxiliary to use my iPod? And even that market's now changed dead. That market's disappearing because it's, I mean, even the car I'm getting in a few weeks, it takes hard drives, SSD drives. You know what I mean? It's like it's moving on. That market's disappearing for it as well.
Oh no, I whilst I am nostalgic, I am not blind to the situation changing. What I find perhaps a little bit frustrating is that obviously I still have a library of compressed music. I use it for testing. I periodically will dig bits of it out if I don't have a lossless version of it. But the 160 gig iPod in particular was large enough to actually cart around a quantity of lossless audio. And when you're dealing with with a decent pair of earphones on it, don't go anywhere near the supplied ones, you could get cracking results out of an iPod. And what with the standard complaints about smartphone battery life, if you use an iPhone like an iPod, you will just mince the battery and then you can't do anything. So it's far from ideal. For those of us who are keen on audio, there's a gap, and only the frighteningly expensive, and it must be said, not desperately user-friendly Astle and Kern players are the only other sort of alternatives left.
Well, there's Sony have just launched their new Walkmans, the high-res Walkmans. So they've entered the market, but they are aiming it at high-res audio.
Well, I shall have to have a look. Joking aside, it's not necessarily a category that I'm done with. I acknowledge that in the same way that I still dick about with turntables. I don't have the conceit to believe that there are that many of me out there to form a meaningful product base. But it'd be nice to see, and I will definitely have a look at that.
Okay, so moving on from the Apple products that were announced last week, and then the quiet disappearance of the iPod Classic. Let's move on to some home cinema equipment, which was announced at CEDIA in Denver again end of last week, and that was 2 projectors from Epson. Now, Steve, you got in touch with Epson UK just to get some more detail on this. Interesting information that we got back, not detailed, but they're looking to see if these laser projectors have an interest and see if the market is interested in them.
Yeah, well, disappointingly for us, they're only currently releasing them in the States, basically testing the waters there to see whether there's a demand for laser projectors. And if they do well in America, then we might get to see them released in this country. I've got to say, it was I didn't expect this from Epson, and reading the press release, the US press release, I got quite excited because it's a very different type of projector that we're used to from Epson. I mean, obviously, they're traditionally known for 3-chip LCD. This is reflective technology, so it's much more like what LCOS, which is liquid crystal on silicon, which is what JVC use, or SXRD, which is what Sony use. This is called, effectively liquid crystal on quartz would be Epson's version. Now, I think we saw this, Phil, at CEDIA Atlanta 3 years ago. And I remember both of us saying, that looks bloody good. Those blacks look really black, JVC black. Mm-hmm. And then we never heard from it again. I think because at the time they were difficult to make. Hopefully this means they've cracked that problem. So you've got a variation of LCOS, which means, inherently better black levels. You've got a laser, or just two lasers, in fact, as the light source, two blue lasers, one providing blue and the other one being bounced off yellow phosphor to create green and red. Brightness 1500 lumens, so not super bright, but certainly at the equivalent, or if not better, than JVC's current lineup, and is similar to Sony's current lineup, which will be their direct competition, I guess. So you've got plenty of brightness. You've got laser, which means you're not going to get degradation over time. You're not going to get it getting dimmer. It's going to have much, much longer life. They're talking about 30,000 hours. So you avoid all the problems you associate with bulbs. And you've got an LCOS style panel in there. You're talking about decent blacks, good performance, consistent performance, bright enough, I think, for most home cinema needs and 3D as well. You're starting to think this looks very tempting and very interesting. And now, admittedly, there's two models. One is a normal a normal full HD projector. The other one, and again, this is sounding an awful lot like a JVC, has what they're calling 4K enhancement, which basically means they're doing exactly the same thing as JVC are with their E-shift. They're basically moving the image diagonally across by half a pixel to create a projected high-resolution image from a full HD.
Because that's not exclusively JVC tech, because it was developed with NHK, wasn't it, in Japan? So.
It's just amazing how similar the flagship 10,000 model looks to, say, an X500 in terms of its features and capabilities. It's there. I mean, other than obviously the light source being laser rather than a bulb. It's almost though, with JVC not having a new projector range this year, it's as though Epson have kind of stepped into the breach and the hole, if you like, that they've left.
Like you say, I wasn't expecting this announcement, basically because, I think we touched on it last week in the podcast, and that is that the projector market seems to be stalling at the minute, and it appears to be stalling because I think people are expecting to move into 4K, and like we said or touched on last week, it seems to be very, very difficult to get the chassis, to get the parts, and to get everything down into an affordable package. I mean, Sony have managed to do it just through the sheer size of their operations. They have the scale to do it. I think everybody else is struggling, and I think the projector market is struggling. So with that in mind, this announcement, it's injected a bit of excitement back again into a market which I feared and still do fear it could be left to one manufacturer, if we're not careful.
Yeah, true. I mean, when we talked about this last week, and you said to me, would I buy a VW300 now? And I said no. One of the reasons I wouldn't want to buy a projector right now is because I said at the time I'm waiting for laser. Didn't think it would come out the following week, in all fairness, but that's what I'm waiting for. I mean, inherently bulbs are not a great way of, they're inherently flawed. I mean, they dim very quickly. You have to keep tweaking them in terms of calibration. They're not consistent, and then you have to replace them when they have relatively short lifespans. Maybe 1,000, 2,000 hours before you're thinking about replacing them. So the idea of a laser projector is, certainly something that really appeals to me.
Yeah.
I hope that what we don't see is that these don't sell well in the States because they're not 4K. Because, if they're using this as a test bed, you want them to do well, so they'll continue to use laser technology as a form of light source. Obviously, the dream then, from our perspective, as AV enthusiasts, presumably, is a 4K laser projector. And I know behind the scenes, I think when we were talking to Sony, they did mention that they're looking at that. So I know other manufacturers definitely are looking at laser as a light source. It's not just Epson. Some have been looking at it for 2 or 3 years now, and I've talked to other people, behind the scenes, quite a long time ago at laser. So that's exciting, and I think, yes, laser projectors is not a huge market, but for the kind of enthusiasts that listen to this podcast, people that are into big screen projection, John's got an X55, right?
Yeah.
So, this is the kind of thing that excites us, laser projection, brilliant. I mean, the big issue going to be is if we get one in for review, is how accurate the colours are, because we have reviewed laser hybrids, which are LED and laser.
And because they're pushing for the extra brightness, then the colours are out.
And green's all over the shop, basically.
Yeah. For me, it's exciting because I think it gets rid of quite a few of the issues that I think a lot of, not just enthusiasts, but a lot of people, if you mention a projector for the home, they suddenly come back with, a bulb, and it'll be hot, and it'll £500-600 to replace the bulb, and it won't last very long, and it'll be noisy, and it'll pick up dust and stuff, and some people's experiences are only those that they've had in public houses, where the projector's on all the time and the bulb's almost out and the colours don't look right and all the rest of it. Whereas I think this kind of technology, when you say to them, oh, no, you never have to replace the light source and it will always be the same or relatively the same brightness, and it just needs to be calibrated maybe the once or twice through its lifetime. I think if those are your selling points, I think you get a bigger market share because people are then more prepared to try a projector in their home, whether it be gaming or movies or a dedicated room. If they don't have to worry about replacing the light source, then I think it's quite appealing, Ed. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something in it. And Steve's concerns about it possibly not selling strongly in the US. Epson need to grasp the bull by the horns. They need to throw a reasonable amount of money at Mike Myers. He needs to get made up as Dr. Evil. He needs to talk about fricking lasers for a bit of this. Sow a bit of imagination outside of just the projector fraternity.
Yeah.
And Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, and let's face it, we were talking about scale and the size of scale that Sony has. Epson are probably about 5 times that when it comes to the projector market. They have the economies of scale there because they have a massive projector side of things, projector business. They can do this. They can put the product out there. So, yeah. Let's see it, Epson, and let's see some balls over here in the UK and launch it here. That'd be nice.
My one question is a health and safety issue, which is what happens if you look into the lens when it's on? Because
I demand that you check that in your review.
No, but surely I know one of them's bounced off phosphorus. That's reflected light, so that should be fine. But the blue laser, the blue part of the spectrum, that's just a laser, so I'm assuming it must be bounced off something else. I don't think it's going to be a Dury.
It's going to be bounced off the front of your brain. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, Lucy, you can open up the other parts of your brain.
That's the case.
Yeah. I imagine it's sort of cutting it like a blowtorch. I expect you to talk, I expect you to die, Mr. Bond.
I would have thought that a company, as Phil points out, large and with a strong US market and an understanding of the litigation that results from, blinding Americans, I would imagine, optimistically, but also based on just standard logic, they've got this sussed. But we'll see.
Yeah, don't point it at aircraft either.
Yeah.
That'll be on there. It'll be on the warning sticker not to do that. Right, so that's the hardware news. We'll be back in a sec with games. Okay, Mr. Botwright, what do we have coming up this week, games-wise?
Coming up, mainly the Games podcast. We've recorded. It should be with you soon, so it'll be up, by the time this goes out. And obviously the biggest news was the release of Destiny. Leon's rolling review is online now. He's put in a couple of updates. Obviously, with Bungie not releasing any kind of preview discs, quite understandably, because it's an online focused game and it's almost impossible to try and rate some kind of a title that is wholly centered around having a decent community, a decent kind of player base before the servers have even been populated. So this led to some accusations that perhaps they're running scared, perhaps they just don't want some bad publicity because they were in line and they have since hit the target of being the biggest launch of a new IP. But it seems like there's something of a split. Some people are a little bit disappointed with it. Some people just think that perhaps it was a little bit missold with regards to the hype. And so, that was the big topic on the Games podcast.
Mark, when's the podcast coming out?
Well, it will be out by the time this is anyone's listening to this.
I would make that promise if I was you.
No, I will make that promise. In fact, it's out now. Take 2. It will be out with you soon. Got that covered?
Imminently.
I did like the fact that, should we say, for the first week in a long time, nobody snuffed it and we did an obituary for an iPod.
Actually, those people have snuffed it. We just haven't bothered mentioning them.
Yeah, Richard Keel.
Richard Keel died. Donald Sinden died. Joan Rivers has died.
Why didn't we do Moonraker?
Mainly because actually Moonraker it's got no quotes.
It's only got one line of dialogue in both films, and it's "Here's to us."
But I mean, Moonraker as a whole is not a very quotable film.
It's not a very good film, for that matter.
Did you know he almost got cast as Darth Vader?
He had the height.
And David Prowse was almost cast as Jaws.
Well, I'll give you a bit of trivia, folks.
West Country Bond villain killing machine. I'd have watched.
Here's to us.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but my mum used to go out with Dave Prowse.
Oh,
So-
God.
Once
Here
or
we go.
twice.
Here we go.
So Darth Vader could actually be your father.
Yes, and we've had that joke as well.
Not in my height, Mark, no.
If we're doing trivia, here's two about Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, since the Richard Kill link. Did you know that the lighting supervisor for Spy Who Loved Me ended up being Stanley Kubrick? Did you know that?
I didn't know that, actually.
And what was the other one?
That's strictly not quite true. He supervised lighting the big, gigantic set with the submarines inside in the 007 stage because it was
That's
so
the one.
vast that they didn't know how to couldn't work out how to light it.
Well, I'd heard it was because the cinematographer was
going
losing
blind.
his eyesight. And also Kubrick's daughter designed Jaws' teeth. And there
Now,
was
to be
the other
honest,
one.
I've got to be honest, that doesn't sound that complicated. But
It was
okay.
loads of floodlights in the end, I think.
No, right, Jaws' teeth, you tit. It's just like a big pair of metal dentures.
And what's the other one?
Oh, right. The other one was in Moonraker, which I didn't know about. But at the time, when they were filming in Rio, was around the same time that Ronnie Biggs was on the run. And there was a plot very similar to Argo to snatch him, which involved some like MI6 CIA type people posing as part of the production crew for Moonraker. And it almost worked up until the point where
They introduced themselves as spies and
well,
said,
someone rang Ronnie Biggs's home phone because they'd assumed he'd already been snatched, and he found out and disappeared.
I don't know, maybe Mr. Botwright is the same as me, but whenever anyone talks about Moonraker, I always just think of Jay and Silent Bob, where they go past the film poster, only Ben Affleck can stop the moon raper.
I still say that's his best role. His most convincing.
playing himself.
Yeah.
Right, is that the games news?
And that's games news.
So, welcome back. And before we go into movie news, yes, we do have a forum member here. So let's find out a little bit more about John, who's joining us this evening. So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right, okay. But if we keep it on topic to start with, from a home cinema point of view, I think I started in the interest in home cinema when I was about probably 14-ish, and I had a little blue Matsui 14-inch portable TV with this top-of-the-range Toshiba DVD player and a Cambridge Soundworks 5.1 sound system in my bedroom, which that caused issues with parents and neighbours and all sorts of things. It progressively got worse and worse over the years, and then I had a detour into blowing up cars and stuff. And after I'd finished blowing up cars, I went back to home cinema again and ended up with what I have now, which is mini sort of I guess studio setup, but in a one-bed flat with a 107-inch screen. So it does the job, but it's a bit like keeping an Alsatian on the balcony.
JVC X55 calibrated.
So,
I provided biscuits and everything for him.
so you talked about blowing up cars. What the hang are you talking about?
Right. I got involved in professional drag racing back in 2002.
This is cars, yeah?
Yeah, it's the only time you want to hear the words professional and drag.
Oh, that should be a new sport, the Olympic.
It's as if I've not heard that one before. Yeah, so I started getting involved with helping out other teams, just, turning spanners, getting covered in oil and clutch dust all weekend. And then the goal all along was that when I left school, it was I want to do a motorsport degree and design Formula One cars, and was promptly told by my maths teacher, "You're shit at maths, so that's not going to happen." So I kind of went the other route and ended up in drag racing, which was a lot easier to get into and a lot easier to lose all your money, which I did. But I set a couple of records, and it was all right being on fire at 200 miles an hour.
Okay, so your records, do they still stand, or have they been beaten? Or?
They were always unofficial, but I think at one point, I assume it still stands, but I had the youngest nostalgia top fuel driver in history, as far as I know. But it's difficult to check. 2:23, I think.
Okay.
And I had the second quickest run in history for a big block Chevy running on nitro, which was the most idiotic idea anyway, because they're not designed to run on nitromethane. They just don't like it.
Now, according to Vin Diesel, only pussies run nitromethane, but I may defer to your greater judgment in this one.
An American muscle always beats Japanese import, right?
It's quite a small world, because the overlap between like the hot rodding scene and the actual racing scene it's quite a big overlap, because the events take place at the same places, because there's only sort of 3 tracks in the UK that get used for big events. We tend to have a big overlap and everyone knows each other.
Yeah, one of them's just up the road from me.
Yeah, I never realised it was such a big scene, and I've got to say, I've watched a couple of videos that you've posted and stuff, and you wouldn't get me sitting in one of those. I mean, I like speed and I like cars, but oh no, not for me.
With due respect, Phil, you wouldn't fit in one of those.
Yeah.
I
disagree. That was coming. Come on.
I don't know if you've seen one of the latest masterpieces on Discovery, Fat and Furious Rolling Thunder, which is like Fast and Loud but full of morbidly obese people, and they drag race quite successfully. So weighing a significant proportion of the total all-up weight of the car doesn't appear to be an impediment, at least not at the lower rungs of the motorsport. And let's face it, if it all went horribly wrong in one of the top fuel ones, if you're enormously fat, you're going to burn properly, and it's all just going to end pretty quickly. I mean, you'll probably just go up like a small bomb.
It's all about weight placement. So, the bigger you are, there's more weight over the back wheels, so technically more traction. And to be really technical, nitromethane works better with load and weight, so you might actually go quicker.
Excellent. This is the sort of sport I can probably work out a diet for.
This is like non-permit events when they don't do drugs and alcohol testing.
Bollocks. I mean, I'm sorry, you're not getting into one of those things sober. Are you telling me that they are? No, because that strikes me as very foolish. It's not like, I don't know, that seems wrong. You'd have to take the edge off, surely.
I did have, there was one little anecdote from, I think it was 2009, and I had one of my many fires at 200.55 miles per hour, this one, and I got towed back to the pits after being
put out, hopefully.
Put out, feet on fire and all that kind of business. So I get back to the pits, go and put the kettle on, make myself a cuppa and get some Jaffa cakes out, because I was sort of getting used to blowing up stuff at this point. It was all kind of, I went to start line expecting to have some sort of fire. And the paramedics turn up in the pits in the little ambulance, and they said, can we check you over, because you've been in a bad fire? I'm like, yeah, if you want. And they're like, can you just come with us? And the first, apparently my response was, do you want a Jaffa cake? And so the paramedics are there saying, are you okay? And I kept asking them, did they want a Jaffa cake? Because I wasn't at all fussed about it, and eventually they just got pissed off and left. So yeah.
But did they have a Jaffa cake?
They didn't even say thank you, please, or anything. It just walked off.
How inconsiderate.
Now you can segue to that, to car chases, can't you, Phil?
Oh, we're not even going there yet.
No, we've got Withers hour yet.
I'll keep it short, don't worry.
Just like you.
It's got to be long enough for me to go downstairs and get another beer.
Are you sitting comfortably?
How long do you need then, Ed?
It's about 90 seconds. I'll be all right.
Just before we leave, John, the reason you're on the podcast is?
I have no idea.
He's been kidnapped by
Steve. It seemed
Steve.
like a good idea at the time.
I think it goes back to before the summer break, didn't it? And I asked about favourite AV moments.
Okay, so what was your favourite AV moment?
Right, off the top of my head, I'd have said seeing Gravity at the cinema, which wasn't even at an IMAX, but it was the first sort of 3D film I'd seen at the cinema that was really worth it. And it was one of those rare instances where a commercial cinema's actually got the head screwed on and knows what they're doing with 3D. And the other one would be the X500 JVC demo at Sound and Vision earlier this year, mainly because the 4K demo was unlike anything I'd expected. Because the regular 1080p demo was as per my X55, it wasn't a lot better. And I was expecting the sort of E-shift with fed native 4K was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be, you know, a whole world apart. And it was properly mind-blowing. It made me realise that JVC, even though they're a bit quiet this year, they didn't need to go the native 4K route yet, because what it can do with all the algorithms built into E-shift seem to do the job anyway.
Okay, cool.
So there would be two big ones, I think.
Yeah, excellent. And do you feel safe sitting in Steve's cinema room at this moment in time?
We're in a study.
It's all right, but to be honest, we're in the middle of nowhere, and you know, you could get murdered out here, and they wouldn't find you for like 2 weeks.
Could, yeah.
Not in Steve's house.
You need a safe word.
Perhaps he's been saying it all night.
No, don't worry. We've all got.
This is a coded message.
Got 90 seconds, Ed. Get moving.
Yeah,
Right.
If you're going, Ed, I'd go now. Put yourself on mute. So, to wrap up the podcast, as always, we go to movie news, and the question is, what's at the cinema, Steve?
It's got a lot of stuff at the cinema this week, Phil, but I went to go and see Most Wanted Man, which is the last starring role for Philip Seymour Hoffman. He will be seen in the next Hunger Games movie, Mockingjay Part 1, but this was his last starring role before his untimely death, I think at the beginning of this year. It's an adaptation of John le Carré story, spy story, set post 9/11, set in Germany, where Hoffman plays a German spy, basically a spy master, who is investigating various Arab networks, various jihadist networks, and a Chechen Muslim guy arrives in Hamburg, and they start following him with the aim of using him to lure in other terrorists and create a case. At the same time, the Americans are getting involved. And, you know, like a lot of John le Carré stuff, it's very well researched, and I suspect very realistic in terms of its approach to modern spying. It's real spies aren't like James Bond. They don't go around introducing themselves by their name and having martinis and screwing lots of girls and driving nice cars. They're grubby men doing grubby things in grubby little rooms, and Hoffman certainly portrays that very well. His character, you feel unwell looking at him. In fact, if he hadn't died of a heroin overdose, I think he would have died of a heart attack, because he's overweight, wheezing away, smoking, looking crumpled and dishevelled. And his performance is fantastic. The problem I had with the film, and it's got a great cast too. Willem Dafoe's in it as a banker. There's Robin Wright these days, not Robin Wright Penn. Robin Wright, who's the American CIA agent who's liaising with him. Rachel McAdams is in it as a German sort of human rights lawyer. The cast is great. Hoffman's fantastic. The problem I had with the film was it is mind-numbingly boring. Nothing happens in it, basically. The plot just goes from A to B. There's no twist. There's no action. There's no tension even. There's no real danger. No one's in any danger at any point in the film, therefore there's no tension. It's about as exciting as watching a tax audit, and about as dangerous, frankly. And that's a real shame, because, you felt like, it sort of nailed the realism. But at one point there, actually, they got a character kept in he's being kept, this Chechen guy is being kept away by the lawyer in a room, but the agents have put little cameras in and bugged it, and they're watching the video feeds, and he's just sort of sitting around, doing nothing all day. And that's a bit what watching this film was like, watching a video feed of somebody not doing very much. So it's a bit of a shame in that sense that his performance is somewhat wasted in the film. I guess it's the source of material, maybe the fault lies there, but it just didn't feel like it was worthy, but very uninteresting, unfortunately. I give it like 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, Steve. Blu-rays released next week. Hannibal Season 2, Fargo Season 1, and From Dusk Till Dawn Season 1. So all TV box sets. Yeah,
well, for some reason at the moment there's not many films coming out on Blu-ray, but some really good stuff coming out on TV box sets. Hannibal Season 2, I've just finished watching on Now TV. Excellent. Really, really enjoyed it. It's a great series. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. It's set before Red Dragon, the story Red Dragon, when Hannibal's still a psychiatrist at large, killing people, and it involves his relationship between him and Hugh Dancy's character, who plays Will Graham, who is a character in Red Dragon. And it's great. It subverts your expectations quite a lot, and It's got some really interesting and quite gruesome murders in it, and various other serial killers. And basically, Hannibal's helping Will Graham hunt these killers down, but at the same time manipulating him and playing with him for his own sort of twisted ends. And it's a really good series. Mads Mikkelsen plays Hannibal. He's very good in it.
He's also a vegetarian
in real life.
Yes. Which I just think is magnificent in the context of watching what he's doing in the series.
I tell you what, there's some fantastic food in it. You watch it thinking, I'm really hungry at the end of this episode. It's an excellent series, worth seeing if you haven't seen it.
John, I'd get running. Run now. I know we haven't finished and all that, but yeah, just go.
We got Fargo season 1. Again, I don't know if anyone's watched it, but I saw it on Channel 4 and it was broadcast. Fantastic series. Again, it takes the sort of central location of Fargo and the kind of the atmosphere of the Coen Brothers original film, but creates all new characters. And in that, you've got Billy Bob Thornton, who's absolutely fantastic in it. It's a great series, and if you haven't seen it, well worth checking out. From Dusk Till Dawn is a TV series, a Netflix series, in fact, based obviously on the Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino movie From Dusk Till Dawn. Obviously, in the case of this one, just watch it on Netflix for nothing. But I haven't seen it, to be honest, so I can't comment on whether it's good or not bad.
Well, I was just going to say, it's all TV box sets, and there's other means other than buying the discs nowadays.
Honest, yeah, I mean, because let's face it, all of those, Sky's still got Hannibal, from what I understand it. 4OD, you can still watch Fargo. I mean, 4OD, they never get rid of anything. It just grows and grows and grows. There's not many compelling arguments unless you are real projector fiends as to why you'd want to rush out and buy any of these on disc.
And that's kind of true about most TV these days, isn't it? I mean, I used to buy a lot of TV box sets, but I just watch it on Netflix or on 4OD or on Sky, wherever. But I still buy movies on Blu-ray. I know John buys quite a lot of movies on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I'm propping up HMV by myself at the moment.
but in terms of TV box sets, I've stopped buying those completely. The only exception to the rule is Game of Thrones, but that's because it's quite cinematic and it looks great on a big screen. But otherwise, yeah, I haven't bought any box sets for a long time.
Right, so those are the Blu-rays released next week. And which one out of the three would you recommend, Steve?
Probably, I'd say Hannibal. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking. If you're a fan, definitely check it out. A fan of the films, that is. But if you haven't seen it, obviously watch Hannibal season 1 first. But that's worth checking out. I'm guessing if you wanted to see Fargo, you probably would have watched it when it was on Channel 4. And I haven't seen From Dusk Till Dawn, so I can't really comment on that. Although I will check it out at some point because, as I said, it's on Netflix, so I can watch it for nothing.
Right then. Right, so
checks in the post from Netflix.
£6.
So we were discussing with John a little bit earlier on about his background, and I think we can figure out he's a bit of a petrol head as well as a home cinema fan, which got Steve thinking about the running order, and he's put in, what movies do we think have the greatest car chases? So let's go to our guest first. John, what do you think is the greatest car chase ever?
My understanding, or what I say would be a good car chase, isn't the obvious like Bullet or Ronin. There's three I'd choose, and it's for technical reasons that are really nerdy, and they're all bad films, but I'll carry on anyway. Right, first one, Tomorrow Never Dies, a Bond film with was it Jonathan Pryce, who was almost cast as Anthony Hopkins, and wish it had been. Car chase in that one in a multi-story car park, which is meant to be
Brent Cross, isn't it?
Brent Cross car park, yeah. With a BMW 7 Series, which was it was badged as a 750 IL, but it was actually a 740. The guy driving
that is very nerdy.
It gets worse.
John, sorry, a personal question, but are you single?
Ish. Anyway.
No, the car doesn't count.
It's BMW 740 with 750 IL badges on it. Driving around this car park, and of course, Bond's on his smartphone, driving it hands-free. Now, in order to film it, they basically sat the stunt driver in the back of the car, took the seats out, and he drove it through 3 little TV monitors, through cameras that were fixed to the wing mirrors and the windscreen. Now, they used a TVR Tasman as the camera car, and clocked him at doing 80 miles an hour in his car park and was struggling to keep up with him. It's one of those wacky normal Bond chases. It's got all the toys in it, but in terms of the driving, considering it's a real car park, it wasn't like on a set or anything. It was on location. That I thought was properly impressive. Next one was another Bond film, which was the worst one ever, which nearly killed the whole franchise. Die Another Day. The car chase on ice, which is some more geeky stuff. The cars were modified to make them four-wheel drive and had small block Chevys put in them rather than the Jag V8 that was in Jag and the V12 that was in the Aston. You wouldn't know about the Aston because they did quite a good dubbing job to get the sound back to what it was meant to be. That was quite impressive because they were filming it in Iceland on ice that was just about to start coming apart. They wrote off several vanquishes during it, and one of them they parked in the side of an iceberg, which sort of totaled that one. So that was another one I thought was quite good. And the last one, which would be my favourite, which was from a film that about 3 people thought was good, was Death Proof, which had one of probably the best real car chases with no CGI, no sort of dodgy graphics and anything else. It was sort of Tarantino's take on what a 70s car chase would be, but with Zoe Bell on the bonnet with no wires, holding on for dear life. And it was bloody good. So that's the ones I go with.
What did you think of the car chases in Need for Speed?
I've not seen it yet.
Oh.
It's on my to-do list. I've heard that they're very good, but I don't know if the cars were real. I'd imagine they've used mocked-up cars because you're not going to go and trash a Koenigsegg.
No, they were mock-ups. Their bodies fitted onto other chassis. They weren't the real things.
They were probably all MR2s.
But the stunt work was mostly for real, not CG, which is a terrible film, but impressive stunt work.
It seems to be the way, though. The other one would be like Fast and the Furious 6 with the
masterpiece.
on
the really long runway.
Yeah,
like
the one 16 miles long.
Yeah, no, the chase that was in, I think it was in Liverpool. Well, it was meant to be in Liverpool, but they filmed it in London whilst the Olympics was on, which I didn't realise. It had that little buggy in it that was like a cross between a 70s Formula 1 car and something from Mad Max. And that was quite cool. There was some quite nifty driving in that. But it tends to be the way that all these good car chases don't crop up in good films. Sorry, Steve.
I agree.
Lost for words there.
He is, isn't he? You could just feel the anger coming, flowing.
It's not too late, John. You can still run.
I can't believe you're sitting next to him.
It's a very small window. I might crawl through.
All right, let's go to Mr. Botwright. What do you think best car chase in a movie?
The best. So we're talking definitive here.
In your opinion?
Oh, in my opinion, probably. I think the chase sequence in Ronin is very good. I think it's kind of, in terms of modern chases, tight kind of European roads. It gets away from the kind of classic spongy American cars, kind of wallowing around corners and kind of clipping cameras and the like. But I've got a soft spot for kind of car chase sequences that seem to be a bit like, the sequencing Tango and Cash, or like in Taken, which just seem to happen in a quarry, and they've always got explosive barrels around the place that blow up. And so I quite like it when they do a kind of chase sequence somewhere different.
Ed?
There are obviously some sort of classics. I don't mind Bullet. Obviously, the problem is with Bullet is once you see certain things, you can't unsee them again. They overtake the same Beetle about 28 times, and Steve McQueen changes up more times, I think, than even Vin Diesel does. Never once changes down. But it's still it's interesting because it reflects the actual imbalance between the two cars quite nicely. The Charger gets away when it's going in a straight line. The Mustang pulls something a bit back in the corners. But for me, French Connection, because it is exactly what you see. It predates CGI. It's a not desperately good car being driven above and beyond what it's capable of doing. And it's magnificent for that. And then there are two films, and it goes back to John made an interesting point about great car sequences not necessarily following great films. The first one is definitely the case because Le Mans, the film, whether it's a car chase or it's a race rather than a chase, but it has no discernible plot. It's just Steve McQueen wandering around looking unbelievably cool and the coolest Le Mans cars there's ever been. And for that, it's just magnificent. It's beautifully shot. It's just one of the most evocative films going, and it's fantastic. And then another one where I argue it is a good film, but it's dependent on... It's not so much the realism of it, because in reality, the chasing vehicle was capable of about 25 miles an hour, is Duel, the original Steven Spielberg made-for-TV film, because it's utterly relentless. It works on so many levels. And yes, in any sane, calm appraisal of reality, even though the car that Dennis Weaver is driving is rubbish, it wouldn't have a problem getting away from that truck. But the film works in a way that you don't care about these things, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'd say honourable mentions to the mini chase in the original Bourne Identity. Again, bit of suspension of disbelief, but I don't think there's much in the way of actual editing beyond what actually is committed to film. I think it works quite nicely. And there's one that's rolling around the back of my head and I can't remember what it is. So that will have to wait until such time as I can dig it out. Honourable mention, of course, to the original car park race in Tokyo Drift for just the complete and utter suspension of disbelief, reality, physics, and indeed everything else. That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, you mentioned mine, didn't you? I was going to mention porn. Anyway, move on, Mr. Withers.
I'm going to go with two films that probably people haven't seen or not that familiar and well known. Again, pre-CG days, the car chases they're not necessarily great films, as John mentioned. I don't know these things are often in great films, but they're great car chases and they're done for real. And the first one is To Live and Die in LA, where the car chase is going the wrong way up a freeway. John looked at me with a grin on his face.
I've seen that one from when you sent me a link to it before, and I'm guessing the other one you're going to say
is the 7-Ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, To Live and Die in LA, which was directed by William Friedkin, so he was trying to top himself from the car chase and in French Connection, and it is. I like it because it's unusual because they're going up the freeway the wrong way, basically. And the other film is The 7-Ups, which is a film I think almost no one's heard of but me, but has a 15-minute car chase in the middle of it. That is just like hell for leather down the streets of New York, and now I think they start off in Manhattan and end up somewhere in Queens, and I think it's pretty much in real time.
The sound was pinch from Bullet, though, wasn't it?
Well, you said that. Obviously, I didn't notice that, but
when you've watched Bullet enough, it's got a certain sound to it. So, was it Roy Schneider?
Roy Schneider, yeah. Or Scheider, sorry.
It's pretty much pinch. So this. What was it? An old Pontiac, I think he was driving, but it's got this 390 FE Ford V8 sound to it.
All right. Well, anyway,
of course it does.
Those were the two films we were going to pick, just because they're obscure. Also, honourable mention to Rendezvous, where they strap the camera to the front of that car and just drive it through Paris at 120 miles an hour at 5 a.m.
That is
this
good.
is my turn to be like John, because that is another dubbed over one thing, because the car is a 1975 Mercedes 6.9, and over the top of it is the sound of a Ferrari 275. But whoever did that drive had testicles the size of space hoppers.
Mm-hmm.
Balls the size of church bells is the technical term.
I think it was also sped up because there's a bit just before he goes through. There's this little archway bridge thing, and he overtakes someone, and his indicator is flashing a lot quicker than it would in the real world.
Well, not necessarily. Do bear in mind that he's surrounded by French cars, and a lot of them, the repeater thing continuously failed until it just stayed on all the time.
I still think it's fake.
Fight.
Nerd off.
If you were mentioning about Le Mans, the other one, which doesn't ever really get a mention, would be Grand Prix.
Yeah, Grand Prix's great.
The Frankenheimer one. And if you see the behind-the-scenes photos of how they shot a lot of the on-car stuff, they strapped the cameraman to the front of the car.
Yeah, but that's how they did a lot of the original Mad Max as well. They just
the Formula One car.
they just bungeed him to the top, the cameraman to the top of the red estate car to film the final sequence. Well, the opening sequence was shot last of the original Mad Max. Most of the camera work is done by a terrified man strapped to the roof of that big red estate car. This is brilliant.
So,
I think Mad Max 2 has to get a mention for just being essentially a chase movie from beginning to end, along with Vanishing Point, maybe.
No, Vanishing Point is just it offends sensibilities when he's flat out racing an E-Type and then just changes down, and instead of his engine just giving up and sending some valves through the bonnet, he mysteriously goes faster. It's just the most...
Oh, but you see, you're missing the point. It's an existential chase movie, isn't it? So therefore you can do that kind of thing.
All right, I'll take your point.
You're picking holes in genuine chase sequences. When 9 out of 10 of them at some point have someone actually then pushing the pedal all the way down and then shooting ahead.
Well, no, the thing is that up until that point, Vanishing Point had been absolutely on the money. It's just so jarring in the context of the rest of the film.
There's also the fact that the very last frame you see of the 1970 Challenger going into the bulldozer, it's no longer a Challenger, it's turned into a Camaro.
Well, maybe
if we're doing pointless factoids, I've actually got the Bullet Chase ones up here on the trivia thing. The Challenger, in the course of the chase, loses 12 hubcaps. Which I know, that's fantastic. But, yeah.
Right, okay, so to wrap up, John...
Hang on, Phil, what are yours, Phil?
I've already said Bourne, but Ed's already mentioned that, so I'm not going to talk about it again.
Herbie Rides again?
The original Italian job.
Oh, the original Italian job, or the Audi S8 D3, which he's in Taken, when he's chasing the boat. The sound of that V8. They get it spot on.
Yeah, what you don't see is him just understeering and the traction control going, no, you can't do this, and taking him to a stop.
Yeah, whatever, Ed. Right, moving on. Before we move on, I should say. John, American cars or European cars for you?
It depends. I mean, I'm quite happy with my little Volkswagen, but a Dodge Challenger Hellcat would suffice as well at the moment. All 707 horsepower of it.
Mark, I'm not sure if you drive or not, do you?
No, don't drive.
Okay, well, if you could drive, what would you drive, American or European?
Whichever's easiest and whichever gets me out of the hell of bus journeys.
Okay, I'm forgetting Japanese as well. Was there any Japanese there, John, that you're interested in?
No, absolutely not. Never, ever. Unless I get a sponsorship deal from Nissan for a GTR. But that's not going to happen either.
I know what the answer is here, Ed. American for you, isn't it? Big off.
Don't get me wrong, I like American muscle cars an enormous amount, but the idea, as I say, I live very near to one of the drag venues that John was talking about earlier on, and just watching someone helming a car the size of Jersey up a British road, it just looks ridiculous. And when you get to like 50s cars and they're dripping with chrome and the rest of it, there's no easy way to say this. You look like a massive tit, and I don't understand why, especially. And I'm sure it's just my subconsciousness playing tricks on me. But the larger the American car in the UK, the shorter the man, and it's always a man driving.
And the more likely that they wear cowboy boots.
So someone will step out of like the 72 Eldorado, which is about 4 miles long, and he would make a jockey look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's just ridiculous. You look like a complete asshole. But I don't know. Mainly European cars for me, but I'm a bit of a funny one in this. Call it borderline autism. I don't have a lot of time for what people call character in cars. Character is a polite word for saying there's something wrong with it, but you'll put up with it. Can't be having with that. It's not part of my vocabulary. That's why I've always preferred Porsche to Ferrari and so on and so forth. I don't have time. The idea of spending 6 figures on a car and it not reliably starting at the time and location where I want it to is just utterly out of the question. Doesn't work for me at all.
Steve?
Yeah.
Sorry.
European.
Okay. And me, I'd go European. I think that's about it.
Find a way to get to the ending from there.
You literally just ran out of steam, then, didn't you? It's like,
I'm done.
Yeah, well, I know that if I mutter the words, John, what Volkswagen do you have? And he's going to say Golf R, and then we're going to get into that whole conversation, and it's going to blow the pants off at everybody.
It does look quite nice because it's parked outside.
It's the same colour as my fridge, though.
What colour's your fridge?
White.
Most fridges are white.
Why did you pick your fridge out of all the things in the world?
I'm sorry. I
It's
have
white.
a real downer on white cars.
I've got to say, John, I love your sticker on the back, though.
No, that's very cool. No, it is. No question about that.
It's the because life's too short for hybrids. Yeah, it's. I've upset several people with it already. So I did point out that it kicks out less CO2 than their cars does, and it does have Blue Motion technology in it.
Yeah, it is amazing. That engine is amazing. I mean, it's 300. Well, it's 295 brake horsepower, 300 and odd newton meters of torque, and the tax bracket is lower than my A4 diesel that I have at the minute.
Barely less economical than my Polo was.
Yeah.
I mean, my Polo is only getting like 40 to the gallon. I'm getting 35-ish at the moment, depending on how quickly I want to get to my destination.
Yeah, it's a DSG as well. You went for, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
I don't think you have any choice in the matter on the R, do you?
yeah, you can have a manual or DSG, but I'd always go DSG.
Well, I mean, yeah, VAG manual.
Or
Ugh.
yeah, well, I had to test drive in an S3 manual and just trying to get the power down on in first, second, or second to third. It was DSG or S-tronic all the way, and I love the little parps that it makes.
Has it got the S3? Has that got a race mode?
No, Audi are not as crude as to call it race. They call it dynamic.
Oh, right, okay. Does it sound like a V6? Dynamic
No,
mode?
because Audi again are not crude enough to have that little sound emulator that the R has. So it doesn't do that.
It sounds nice. I
think the more realistic argument is that Audi couldn't guarantee their 45-point profit margin if they stuck these things in, so they decided against it.
Yeah, okay, Ed. Whatever. Talk to the hand because the face ain't bothered. See, I told you if we got talking on that, it'd blow the pants off everybody, so there you go.
We do need to get Steve a new car though, because now I've seen his car during daylight hours. It's not what I expected. Last time I saw it, it was pitch black under like orange streetlights, and I was convinced it was like metallic grey. So when I drove straight past it and ended up parking outside someone's farm, I thought that can't be his car. He'd never pick a green one, just like that green.
Has he gone for the rat look?
It was like. I remember having like an outhouse toilet that was the same colour. Like sort of a poor man's turquoise sort of thing.
Poor man's turquoise.
Poor man's turquoise is a great phrase.
Is that the door being bolted?
Steve will have his new car.
He's going to have
And
a
an
nice
evening meal.
a nice white Golf R. All right, enough. That is it for this week's podcast. Thank you very much for listening. And my thanks to Steve Withers.
You're right. No human being would stack books like this.
Mark Botwright.
Don't cross the streams.
Ed Selley.
Why worry? Each one of us is carrying an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on his back.
And for the last time, John Best.
We have the tools and we have the talent.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark AVForums for the latest news, reviews and video. And why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. And thank you for doing that. We're currently number 6 in the top 10 gadget podcasts. So thank you very much for your support. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you again next Wednesday.
Soon to be number 6 in the motoring podcast.